Good morning, everyone. I just want to have a sense of whether people can hear me before we start.
Yes, we can.
Yes, thanks very much. I just really want to welcome everybody to the official launch of the Hydrogen Valley Feasibility Study Report. This for us as the Department of Science and Innovation is a very proud moment, especially because one of the things that we have always wanted when we started very many years back, 13 or so years ago, with the hydrogen South Africa. One of the things that we have wanted to do was to reach a point where we are going to build a very strong partnership with the private sector in order to take the hydrogen society into being part of the critical aspects of other economic activities in the country. So today, as we launch this report, we are also encouraged that we are doing so on the National Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Day, which is the 8th of October. And the webinar today is really just to make sure that we build on this particular special day in aligning for the Hydrogen Society Roadmap with this very important step today. So we've got a number of our partners, both from government, as in government entities, and also from the private sector. So to get us started on today's program, I'm going to be inviting the interim CEO of SANEDI, Ms. Lcoh Manamela, heads one of the entities that is an implementing agent for our Hydrogen Society roadmap. They have been quite crucial in this process of this development of this report. So I'm going to hand over to you, Lcoh, and then you're going to then tell us very briefly about this and hand over to the presentation on the report itself. Thanks very much, Lcoh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mofe, for the introduction. I'm just briefly gonna just give an introduction into the report, but maybe perhaps before I do that, just maybe to congratulate the DSI on another milestone. As we know, the DSI has been involved in the hydrogen research for some time and supporting the research in the country through their Hydrogen South Africa program. And today we are seeing yet another milestone that the DSI has reached, and showing that it is possible that we can actually move research from just being research, but to unlocking opportunities for manufacturing and commercialization of research in South Africa. So basically the Hydrogen Valley report has culminated as a result of just the realization that hydrogen is a key priority for South Africa. If you recall, in the last State of the Nation address, our President Ramaphosa, cited that hydrogen fuel cells are a national priority as an alternative energy source for South Africa. There's a potential, a really significant potential, an opportunity for economic development for South Africa through hydrogen, also new jobs that can be created, the monetization of the Platinum Valley. It is it really could be a game changer in terms of economic growth in the country if we actually do it well. So the Hydrogen Valley actually seeks to unlock the opportunities that are there for the hydrogen economy in South Africa. The DSI, in collaboration with its partner, Anglo-American Energy, and also Bambili Energy, with the support of SANEDI through the Energy Secretariat, have gone through a process of developing what we are here today to launch, the Hydrogen Valley report. And what you will find in the report when you go to it is basically a report that seeks to unlock or to kickstart, for lack of a better word, the hydrogen economy in South Africa. They've gone through a process of identifying certain key hubs that can be centers where we actually start to kickstart the demand and the production of hydrogen, or the hydrogen economy in South Africa. What the Valley also seeks to do is to aggregate multiple demand segments so that we can, for example, reap a number of advantages or multiple advantages, for example, through cost saving or the sharing of infrastructure. We can have a competitive advantage through production of the, or through the economies of scale. We could also ramp up the hydrogen production and fast track the development of local supply chain. So there's a number of benefits or key benefits that you will see coming through in the report as the presenters go through that really hold a potential for South Africa. What you will find in the report is, yes, they have spoken about the 3 or key hubs that have been identified within the report, which is the Johannesburg, Mokalakuena, and Durban, and the presenters will go into a lot more detail in terms of why specifically this particular what you call them hubs, or these particular areas have been selected to be part of the hydrogen Valley. There's also like a very detailed analysis of the demand. You know that you need to have a demand for you to actually be able to kickstart any economic activity. So there's quite a thorough analysis in terms of the demand for hydrogen in South Africa. They've looked at the best case and the worst case scenarios for South Africa within the short to medium term, to say what kind of a demand can we expect from the hydrogen, and what kind of factors actually we need to also take into account that will enable for us to reach those different levels of demand. And there's quite a correlation between what the study is presenting and what has also been contained within the hydrogen roadmap. What the study has also sought to do on the demand analysis side is also look at the sectors, what is possible within the building sector, what is possible within the mobility sector, and what is also possible for industry. What we've also looked at, or the study has looked at, is also the supply. Where are we going to get the supply for the hydrogen? They've sought to also calculate what will be the levelized cost of supply of hydrogen for South Africa relative to other maybe sources of energy. So I think that will also give quite an interesting insight as well. There's also issues around infrastructure. What will be the infrastructure requirements as we look at green hydrogen in South Africa? What will be the energy supply requirements, water requirements, the pipeline requirements, as well as issues around storage? All of that comes through in the report with different recommendations in terms of when and how, for example, as South Africa, we can actually progress into maybe building up capacity when it comes to infrastructure and so forth. Opportunities for the transportation of hydrogen. How do we do that through the different through the different corridors? Also maybe unlocking the export market. How do you also go there? There's also quite an interesting analysis around the social impact that we expect the hydrogen to have. Some positive information, also positive insights that are coming through along the sides of the kind of GDP growth we can see in the short, medium to long term for South Africa as we get into the hydrogen economy. Also the jobs that could be created. There's actually quite a significant number of jobs that can be created along the different, along the very chain, from research to maintenance to engineering, that we will see being created as we implement the hydrogen valley. There's also a very significant impact on the platinum sector. We actually stand a very good chance. I think it could actually unlock quite a great what you call this, the economy activities for the platinum sector, and that information will come through in the report. What is also key is also to look at the enablers. The report also highlights what will be the enablers, looking specifically at the what you call the policy and the regulatory environment. What kind of a regulatory environment do we need to have in South Africa for the hydrogen economy to be a success? And it is good to say that I think over the recent days, the recent years, we've seen as the regulatory environment has changed and has made it possible for the integration of alternative energy sources into the power grid. The IRP has made provision for the integration of renewables and other alternative energy sources into the energy mix. So hydrogen also, I think, in South Africa, given the regulatory environment, stands a very good chance. And I think the report also brings us across to say that there is actually an enabling environment for a hydrogen economy, but also seeks to identify other opportunities of how we can enhance the regulatory environment to unlock the hydrogen economy even further in South Africa, looking at financial incentives, looking at policy instruments, looking at standards that perhaps would need to be in place. So all of that will be detailed in the report. The report also seeks, for example, as we look at how to kickstart the hydrogen economy in South Africa, as a number of projects that we can use to sort of incubate or to kickstart the hydrogen economy in South Africa. And this project across the different regions, like I said, the 3 regions or the 3 hubs that have been identified being the Johannesburg, Mokalakuena, and also being the Durban hubs. So all of that will be covered in the report. So basically the report gives insight of what is possible in South Africa, or how South Africa can actually reap an economic benefit that will have all of this positive socio-economic impact for South Africa. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail. For me, mine was just to introduce the report and just give you just a sneak preview in terms of what to expect from the report. And then I will then hand over to the other presenters who will then give you the details in terms of what has come out of the study. But it is really just showing the potential that is there for the country as we kickstart with the launch of this particular report, the hydrogen economy in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Thabo. And I really want to also thank you for the leadership that you have provided. I think since we have partnered with Sanedi as one of our implementing partners, we're starting to really see that energy being injected into the work that we do. So thanks very much. And I really want at this point in time to introduce and acknowledge the role that Energy Impact has played after we have decided in partnership with Energy Services South Africa, Anglo-Plat and Wambili Energy to want to get this study going. The work that we have done, as you probably know now, is the work that has begun to set the tone of how we are going to go ahead in moving forward. So I want to, without any further ado, introduce Mr. Giordano Vincenzo from Energy Impact. Yeah. To really just give us the actual presentation, provide us with the key outcomes of the Hydrogen Valley Feasibility Study report. And you're gonna take us through, hopefully not beyond 11 o'clock, but the platform is yours. As you can see, there's already a lot of excitement around this report. So now we're just gonna be getting it from the people who were down in the trenches and doing the work. So it's over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me today. So my name is Vincenzo Giordano. I'm a director at Engie Impact. This is part of the Engie group. So we're the entity that has specifically the mission to support organizations and governments in accelerating the transition to a low carbon world. So helping organization and government from the strategy design, like we're doing here in this project, actually to the implementation of concrete projects. So in sorry, I'm not seeing the screen anymore. Okay, now it's back. So the opportunity here is to look how we can unlock hydrogen opportunities in South Africa. As you know, hydrogen, and specifically green hydrogen, is a key element if we want to achieve the decarbonization objectives set in the Paris Agreement. And South Africa also has an ambitious objective to be net zero by 2050. But green hydrogen is also potentially a lever for growth. It's a strategic priority for South Africa's economic development and decarbonization. So the goal of the study in this context was really to look at what are the necessary conditions to kickstart the hydrogen economy in South Africa. And particularly, we've looked at this hydrogen valley, which is this corridor stretching from Mokalakuena to Durban, Richards Bay. So the study has been commissioned by the Department of Science and Innovation, jointly with a consortium of industrial players, so Anglo-American, Bambili, and ENGIE. We have carried out this study over the past 6 months in very tight collaboration with all the representatives of the sponsor entities that I really would like to warmly thank for their contribution. It has really been a joint work. So particularly Rebecca Maserumule and Mandy Milo from DSI, Famida Smith from Anglo-American, Zanele Mavuso from Bambili, Frank Lebaron from ENGIE. And I would also like to acknowledge the great contribution from Sanedi. And I would also like to take a moment to remember Dr. Minesh Bipat, who was working with us on this project and sadly passed away before the report was completed. And of course, I would like to thank also all my other colleagues. There was a big team in ENGIE Impact that carried out the study. Another thing that I would like to emphasize is that, as you probably know, there is an ongoing national roadmap for the South Africa Hydrogen Society, which takes more a national lens. So we have made sure that this report is actually complementary and takes into account the outcomes of the Hydrogen Society roadmap. But here we try to take a more regional lens, a more project-specific lens, because we would really like to get to the identification of concrete projects that can start as a catalyst to then develop further hydrogen in South Africa. One other thing that I would like to mention before we then deep dive into the study is that over the last few months, we have extensively reached out to several stakeholders in South Africa. So we have interviewed over 20 organizations. We have had a workshop with over 60 stakeholders that have participated, where we check the appetence for hydrogen application in South Africa. We have tested the hypothesis in the report, etc. So it's really been important to connect with all the ecosystem, hydrogen ecosystem in South Africa. If we go then to the next slide, I will present a little bit more detail, the context. So this is the corridor that we have explored. So going from Mokalakuena, Johannesburg, Pretoria, up to Durban, because it's a corridor where there are already a number of interesting initiatives related to hydrogen. There are initiatives on the mines, so tracking mines, mining trucks, in the Mokalakuena area. There is hydrogen in the industrial area around Johannesburg, the corridor, the freight corridor between Johannesburg and Durban. So there are a number of activities that are already ongoing. And then specifically, we have looked at the notion of the hydrogen hub, which is really a key concept behind the study. Typically, we know that hydrogen, it's not easy to launch as a new technology, because you always have to solve for this chicken and egg problem of supply and demand. So you need to have demand in order to secure supply, and then if you don't have supply, then demand cannot materialize. So the notion of the hub is really trying to look at areas where there is potential concentration of demand, where you can then have a co-localization of supply production assets for hydrogen and demand and off-takers of hydrogen. Behind the notion of the hub, I think there is an important message that we try to convey with the report is that hydrogen is not like solo music. It's not a music that you do just by yourself. I mean, you really need an orchestra to make sure that hydrogen can actually develop. And it's very important that it's at the heart of this hub notion that you have an ecosystem mentality where you have different actors, private and public, that can come together to make these hubs happen. Nobody can develop hydrogen applications alone, at least in this phase where we are starting this transition. And the notion of the hub is at the heart of a lot of hydrogen developments across many countries. I think has been calculated that there are around 30 hydrogen valleys and hubs that has been recently launched in over 18 countries. So it's kind of a global phenomenon. So it's great to see that in South Africa can also take the same direction. I will go to the next slide. So what are the benefits of these hubs? Why they can really provide benefits? First thing is that this can help to future-proof your investments, because when you have co-localization of demand and supply in the same area, this can create economies of scale. You can leverage shared infrastructure, and so the investments are more secure. You can de-risk your investments, because this is something also that we have observed here when working on the design of the hubs in South Africa, is that if you have enough diversity in terms of off-takers of demand, then you can de-risk your investment, because you're not just relying on one specific off-taker, but you have multiple off-takers that can help you to secure hydrogen production investments. Then, of course, the notion of the hub can also facilitate this ecosystem mentality, where you can help different actors to come together, because there is a concrete playing field, this specific hub, where they can work together. And the fourth element that I would emphasize is that the notion of the hub, as I was saying, is developing worldwide, and so it's also an opportunity to attract potentially investment fundings, also interest from other countries, maybe also looking at the options for export. If we go to the next slide, so the hub at the center, a number of benefits for the hubs. What we have concretely done then in the study. So what I will detail in the next few slides is we have selected 3 specific hydrogen hubs, and I will present in a second what was the rationale for choosing those 3. And then for each of these hubs, we have looked at, on the one hand, the demand. What's the potential demand that can materialize in that hub? What are the options for producing hydrogen in that specific hub, and what will be the cost? So how competitive would green hydrogen be compared to alternatives? And then based on that sort of a vision of how the hub could look like, then try to identify concrete projects that can be launched today and that are aligned with the vision of each specific hub. So it's not launching a number of isolated initiatives, but these initiatives are really contributing to contribute to that vision. And then, as was mentioned before, we're looking at how these hubs can also create socioeconomic impact, because this is really a key dimension. I mean, green hydrogen can, yes, help to decarbonize the economy, but can also be a vector for creating new business, new jobs. And then the last point is that looking at the regulatory and policy enablers. As I was saying, it's important to have the public and the private sectors together to make this happen. So the public sector has also a role to play in setting up the right regulatory and policy context. We go to the next slide. So we can enter into a little bit more in detail of how we have worked on the assessment of the hydrogen demand in these hubs. So these are the 3 hubs that have been defined. So first hub, the hub A, it's in the area of Johannesburg, but also getting the fringe of Pretoria. A second hub in the area of Durban, but we've also considered Richards Bay, considering also how crowded the port of Durban is. So we thought that could be also interesting opportunities in the Richards Bay area. And the third hub is the area of Mokalakuena and Limpopo, so more in the north. The previous slide. Just to complete how we have selected these hubs. So the hubs have been selected according to 3 main criteria. So we have looked at what's the potential for hydrogen demand in those areas, considering, for example, in Johannesburg area, the potential for industrial off-takers, in the area of Durban, Richards Bay, the potential in the port, but also the potential for powering hydrogen trucks along the N3 between Johannesburg and Durban, and then the mining area in around Mokalakuena. So there was first consideration about the demand. The second one was the possibility to produce hydrogen, so the potential for renewable, the availability of infrastructure, etc. And then the third element, which is really important, is also looking at how these hubs could contribute to the just transition, so an economic development that can bring social impact, particularly to more fragile communities. So we saw potential in those three hubs. So we selected these 3 hubs together with the other colleagues in the consortium, and then we have moved up to try to assess the potential demand. So that's the next slide. Here I would like to emphasize that we have carried out a really detailed bottom-up assessment, so really trying to map what are the industries that are present in each area, and how many trucks are currently running across along the highways. How many mines, and what's the potential for hydrogen, at least the technical potential for hydrogen to replace some of the energy vectors today. So hydrogen as a feedstock, so for example, in the ammonia process, hydrogen as a fuel, so for example, for trucks, or hydrogen as a way to produce energy, so heat in industrial processes. So we have assessed the technical potential, and then we have complemented that view by considering what's a realistic uptake curve, how quickly we can actually realize the technical potential of hydrogen across all those applications. And for doing that, we have not only considered a wide research on say all the forecasts in reports worldwide and best practices across other projects that we are observing worldwide, but also tested that with the appetite that was coming from the local actors in South Africa. So with that in mind, we were able to have a realistic view of what we think would be the potential demand for hydrogen in those hubs, if the hub is in the end fully realized. So you see, we have a low case and high case. So depending on how much hydrogen can actually be adopted, and you see also the characteristics behind each hub. So in Johannesburg, it's more an industrial hub somehow, even if there is also significant potential for hydrogen for mobility. So here we were thinking also at opportunities to use or to replace public buses in Johannesburg with the hydrogen buses. On the industrial side, here we're talking about all the industrial clusters around Sasolburg and Springs. In the Durban Richards Bay, mobility is, I would say, it's the centerpiece. So again, the freight corridor, the entry, but also we explored opportunities for how hydrogen could be used in the port as a vector directly in the port operation, but also potentially for marine bunkering using ammonia. But this is more post 2030, so more in the longer term. But we know that South Africa has a clear ambition to play a role in, let's say, in the decarbonization of shipping and play a role as a hub to attract ships. And then there's a hub in Mokalakuena Limpopo, which is more a mining focused hub. There is, as you know, a key driver for green minerals. So there is an opportunity also for to use green hydrogen to decarbonize the materials that are coming from mines. But there are also a number of other positive impacts for the local communities. It was mentioned before also the possibility to boost the production of certain elements like platinum, etc. But the third hub is really about the demand, hydrogen demand related to mining. There we also consider opportunity for example, the Limpopo Science Park, which is looking for opportunities in developing green hydrogen as a part of a R&D strategy in South Africa, and would like to develop fuel cells for its data center. Moving to the next slide. So this is an overview of the demand. So this is more a zoom on the specific demand that we have identified, potential demand that we have identified in each of the hubs, looking at the low and high scenario, and also looking at 2025, 2030 horizon. You see here what we call the anchor demand. It's important in the notion of the hub to have in mind what could be the, let's say, the first mover, the main load that can materialize first, and then once they are there is supply of hydrogen starting to flow, then other loads and other off-takers could materialize. So it's really important to have a first nucleus of off-takers. And I was mentioning here, in the industry, there are opportunities in oil refineries to shift from gray to low carbon hydrogen. The use of hydrogen in the ethylene and ammonia industry. Again, also they're switching from gray to low carbon hydrogen. Opportunities in the iron and steel. South Africa has also a strategy for green steel, which is quite ambitious. So this would also play into that objective. I mentioned also work on the demand, potential demand from heavy duty trucks via the N3 and N1. And we've also explored what would be the potential actually for shifting part of this cargo to rail. Dense mobility, so it's an important one. I mentioned already the buses, public city and intercity buses in Johannesburg, Pretoria, in the wider Gauteng region. And then another application is about the use of fuel cells in public buildings. The airport, or the Ortambo Airport, would also be a possible off-taker. And we've also sensed in the market an interest from other businesses to equip some of their office buildings, potentially data centers, with fuel cells as a primary supply or as a backup. And in terms of just transition, so I was mentioning there's a number of benefits that goes from the reviving some of the industrial activity, making them more resilient to climate transition, and also the creation of better air quality, for example, in the city by switching to hydrogen buses, etc. So that's Johannesburg. If we move to the next one, which is for the Durban Richards Bay. So here we have identified a number of potential off-takers. Again, here the focus is more on the anchor demand. So a big chunk of it is related to the heavy and medium duty trucks via the entry freight corridor, with the implementation of refueling stations on both ends, so I'll say in Johannesburg and in Durban. I was also mentioning that, yes, we explored H2 trains. There's something that needs to be further assessed there in terms of the appetite from Transnet to go in that direction. There is all the fuel switching potential in the port itself, oil refinery. Also there are opportunities for titanium mining trucks in the area of Richards Bay, and again also public buildings, so the use of fuel cells in public buildings. In terms of the just transition, so we saw also the opportunity to develop further the port of Richards Bay, because Durban port is already one of the busiest ports in South Africa. So it could be an opportunity also for Richards Bay to further develop its activity there. So a number of applications also there. If we go to the Mokalakuena Limpopo, I mentioned already there, it's mainly a mining focused hub. So it's mainly, the idea is to use hydrogen as a fuel for mining trucks for different type of mines. So platinum, gold, titanium, etc. And as you probably know, there's already a project that is ongoing led by Anglo American, and ENGIE is also partnering with Anglo American on that to use or to switch mining trucks to hydrogen. Yeah, I mentioned already here, just transition is that it's key, this transition to green mining for many reasons. I think there's a positive impact for the community, making let's say catching the wave of the green minerals that can provide even more long-term security and growth potential for the mining industry there, etc. So, and also, I mean, local communities that might find new jobs in the area related to this hydrogen shale. So that was in a nutshell. So I try to be brief, but gives you a sense of how we have looked at the hydrogen demand potential in each of the hubs, going very specifically on each of the main segments. So industry, mobility, and buildings and mining. So these four main sectors. If we go to the next slide, so one other thing that we have looked at, of course, is the potential for export. So far we have looked at the demand, the local demand, produce green hydrogen for domestic consumption. But of course, we know that there is an opportunity also for exporting hydrogen. There are a number of countries that are considering exporting, a number of countries that are considering importing hydrogen. Just mention one example. A few months ago, the German Ministry of Energy announced a program, the H2 Global Initiative, to secure long-term supply contracts from other countries outside Germany, and South Africa is one of the country that they've been looking into. But one thing that you need to have in mind, that is also what we try to show on this slide, is that there is competition. So there is potential, but there is internal competition in the sense that certain countries might produce green hydrogen themselves. So this is a first estimation that we have done on what will be the cost of hydrogen shipped from South Africa to some of these countries, say Japan, South Korea, and how much they would have to pay to produce in-house. But I think South Africa is quite close, but of course it's the distance of transport has a big impact. But there is also competition from other countries that would like to export as well. So here we have, just as a comparison, made an assessment with Australia and the Emirates, so in the Middle East, to Europe and to Japan respectively. So this is something also to have in mind, how to make sure to be competitive compared to other countries. So maybe choosing the right destination could be an option. And the other thing that I would like to mention related to export is that we have also during the study assessed that there are other opportunities in South Africa for exporting. So there are other ports that are being considered for exporting hydrogen. And typically they are more on the let's say the west coast. So there is the port of Bego Bay, the port on Kura, where there are a number, of the port of Saldanha, if I remember correctly, that are all being considered as export ports. So there might be also some consideration internally on which port is most suitable to export green hydrogen. The general recommendation here for us is to make sure to develop the hydrogen demand, the domestic hydrogen demand in any case, because this will create the momentum, will create infrastructure, will create the knowledge, and then consider the opportunities also for the export, which can also be considered on an opportunistic basis. So depending on opportunity for, say, international funds, etc., there could be opportunities to also go for export. But developing the domestic demand is also something that's it's key. So it should not be should not put all the eggs in the export basket, so to speak. Okay. So maybe the last thing I would like to mention on the previous slide is that on the export, what we have considered is, of course, the conversion of green hydrogen into green ammonia as a transporting fuel. So that's the way to today is the most cost effective for very long distance transport to transport green hydrogen. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So we have talked about the demand, domestic demand, potential for export. Now we look more into the supply side of things. So if we go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, so what we have done is that we have carried out quite a detailed modeling of the hydrogen production chain. So from renewables to the electrolyzer, distribution, transmission, transportation, and distribution of hydrogen up to the off-taker. So we're looking at what's the optimal configuration to minimize the levelized cost of hydrogen. We have considered different options. So we consider the possibility to connect the electrolyzer directly to the grid and rely on green PPA. In the end, we have found that today the recommended option is to look at off-site dedicated renewable plant powering the electrolyzer, and then relying on pressurized tanks, trucks to move the hydrogen. There is not yet enough volume to justify the investment in pipelines, but this is something that can be further developed in a second step. So here are the let's say the LCOH ranges that we have calculated for the 3 hubs, considering the renewable potential there, the cost of the electrolyzer, and the cost also of the transportation. And I will enter into a little bit more detail now on what are the possible locations to produce green hydrogen in each of these hubs. If we go to the next slide, yeah, the message I would like to give on the supply side is that there is still a green premium for hydrogen in the 3 hubs. This is due to a number of factors that we have tried to be really, I wouldn't say conservative, but really realistic on what are the realities on the ground. And in our assumptions, we have not yet just considered elements like the capex of the electrolyzer itself, I mean, out of the factory, but also the bill of plant, the civil works, the implementation cost, etc. So you should look at these numbers as also, say, I wouldn't say like a worst case, but it's a conservative but realistic, we think, assessment of green hydrogen. But there is clearly potential to do even better should the conditions also worldwide go in the right direction. So if we have really a confirmed strong momentum for hydrogen, economies of scale kick in, big projects start to happen. So clearly there is potential to go below, but we want to be quite realistic in our assessment, because also we leverage the operational expertise that we have within the ENGIE group, so the relationship with manufacturers, etc. So we really want it to be not just to provide some numbers on a PowerPoint. So you see that there is still a green premium, but one thing that is important to have in mind is that there is clearly still a potential for green hydrogen, because in all the sectors that I mentioned before, either that there are industries that could be ready to pay a green premium, or there is a possibility to start small, but then already prepare the next phase, so be ready for the hydrogen transition. And also there is an important policy objective at government level to make sure that hydrogen can also be a lever for a just transition. So create jobs, develop new industries, and also secure the existing industries, making them more resilient to climate transition risks. So you see here the range. We are in the range of $4 per kilogram of hydrogen. On top of that should be added around, depending on the hubs, between $0.50 or $0.8 per kilogram related to the distribution of hydrogen. If we go to the next slide, I will try to go quick because I see that the time is running. I would like to make sure that we have also some time for questions. So on the supply side, locations in each of the hubs. In the Johannesburg hub, we have considered a number of locations, so between Sasolburg and the N3, because it was quite strategic in terms of position to provide hydrogen to the industrial cluster, but also to fill refueling stations along the N3 and also in Johannesburg. Other location between Springs and Secunda, and location 3 in, we have also looked at locations where you produce green hydrogen that are actually far away. So we consider a number of options. So here the hydrogen production is close, so the electrolyzer is close to the renewable infrastructure. So you have the PV, the wind, it's mainly PV in this specific hub, and then the electrolyzer is close by. We've also considered the opportunity to have the PV and wind outside the hub, where the solar potential in particular is higher, and then either move electricity and then they have the electrolyzer there, or have the electrolyzer close to the PV farm and then move the hydrogen molecule. But this was not as competitive as actually having the renewable assets and the hydrogen assets close together. The other thing I would like to mention is that in terms of location, where you want to install your hydrogen assets, it does not really matter in terms of LCOH. So whether you move it differently in the hub, there's not a big impact on the LCOH. So the actual position of the electrolyzers should be chosen in function of other strategic considerations. So for example, how close they are to the demand, or for example, if they are close to gas pipelines that might further develop in the future. So we're not consider them today, but they might be an option for the future. So that's Johannesburg. If we go to the next slide, on Durban, so you see the red dots, the green dots. And so these are the points where we have considered opportunities for producing hydrogen. The third dot, you see, it's in the sea. It means that we have also explored the possibility to use offshore wind to produce green hydrogen, but it was not as competitive as actually using a mix of onshore wind and PV and produce hydrogen there on the coast. Yeah, so I will. The main criterion here is to have green hydrogen that is actually close to some of the demand centers that we have observed, and particularly I would say the port and also Port of Durban, and also between Durban and Richards Bay. I will move to the next one so that we complete the overview. So for the Mokalakuena Limpopo hub, so you see the green dots there as well, where we have the supply. The red dots are the demand. So here, it's a very large area, as you know, and so the distance between the off-takers is significant. So what we have found as an optimal configuration is that each off-taker, so for example, each mine is producing its own hydrogen on site. And then we've also considered, so these smaller green dots, there are opportunities for certain production of hydrogen that can serve either multiple smaller sites of mining sites, or can also provide can feed the refueling stations of the N1, which is close by. Yeah, I mentioned before that there are a number of activities there. So there are a few hydrogen demonstrations already happening in the region. We also identified around 120 megawatt of solar PV that are installed in this area. And as I mentioned before, Anglo American is also investing in hydrogen powered fuel cell mining trucks there. So there's potential to clearly to scale up that as an anchor off taker. So moving to the next slide. Yeah, it's when we look at all the investments that can happen if we want to make these hubs materialize by 2030. So in the hypothesis that we are investing in renewable assets and electrolyzers in particular to meet the hydrogen demand across these three hubs, then we get to an order of magnitude of the necessary investments, which is in the range of $3 to $6 billion US dollars. So this gives you the order of magnitude of the necessary investments to deliver these hubs at the 2030 horizon. Again, the hubs should not be seen as this is necessarily what's going to materialize, but the hub are important as provide a vision of where we can actually go and how we can further develop the hydrogen industry in South Africa. If we go to the next slide, so once we had defined all these the hubs, the hydrogen demand potential, the supply production potential, we have looked at what we can do today to actually get to that hub vision. What are some of the concrete pilot projects that we can start implementing today to create the momentum? If we go to the next slide, so we have identified a number of potential, what we call pilot projects that can serve to kickstart the hubs. So you have this list here. So they are organized by type of application. So whether it's mobility, industry, or buildings, and with the little colored dots, you see in which hub they would be most relevant. So we have screened a number of options. At some point we had more than 15 that are listed here, but we also consider more than that. And then we have shortlisted 9 of them because we saw quite an interesting potential in terms of how close cost competitiveness is the market appetence that you have in the area, and then also the what will be the contribution to a just transition? What will be the potential also to kickstart certain applications that might have a positive impact in terms of socioeconomic benefits. So I don't have the time to go in detail, but in the report you will find a description of each of these pilot projects. So, for example, take the first 2. You have the buses conversion in cities like Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Durban. So this is something that will also be based on government steering to convert at least part of the fleet of public buses into hydrogen buses. The mining trucks, that's scaling up the project that Anglo American is already working on, for example. Other projects could be to have invest in use of hydrogen for equipments in the ports, so say straddle carriers or cold ironing, etc. So all these type of applications, but can also go into the industry. So the use of hydrogen for ethylene and ammonia production, or also the use of hydrogen fuel cells in buildings and data centers. We have already have one example. I think it's the Anglo American corporate office buildings in Rustenburg will already host hydrogen fuel cells as backup power. So you see here the volume associated with these pilot projects is amounts to some tens of megawatts of installed hydrogen. But the goal is that all these projects can then have follow-up, can have a scale-up phase, and then can probably expand into other sectors. So you can start creating the momentum. And as I was mentioning at the beginning, it's not just you have a number of disparate projects, pilot projects. They are all under the umbrella of a hub vision, so they can really contribute to develop the hub. If we go to the next slide, I will try then to conclude. I see I have still 3 minutes left. So on the socioeconomic impact, again, green hydrogen can really be an opportunity for growth. Looking at the investments that we have sized particularly for renewables assets and the electrolyzer, so those $3.26 billion of investments, there are a number of socioeconomic effects that we have assessed. So socioeconomic impact in terms of GDP, socioeconomic impact in terms of jobs, so between 14,000 and 32,000 jobs per year, and also positive impact on the tax revenue. And what I would like to emphasize is that on the job front, we have provided also some qualitative insights on the type of jobs that could be either created, so new jobs, because we are developing a new sector, so the hydrogen sector. Could be a preservation of jobs, because you could have certain industries that might be more at risk, or might be less competitive in the long term because of request for green products, so competition from other countries that have decarbonized faster. So it's really preserving jobs in industries that you want to make more resilient to the climate transition. And then also the conversion of jobs from high carbon sector to low carbon sectors. The last point I would like to mention is about the platinum. So this was mentioned before. So this is one of the benefits. I wouldn't say it's the main benefit. It's one of the benefits of setting up a green hydrogen production. So what we have sized is that clearly developing the hubs would boost platinum production, but this would be in a, say, a few percentage points of what the current platinum production is in South Africa. So this is also to emphasize that there will not be any platinum supply constraints to satisfy the demand of the valley. Finally, I think I have just, okay, I will go very quickly on this one. So on the regulatory enablers, we have considered a number of options for the government to support. So some guiding principles on the supply side to facilitate the deployment of renewables, or supporting the reduction of the cost of the capex of the hydrogen supply infrastructure, and then also having an intervention on the demand side. So encouraging hydrogen applications through financial incentives, creating the momentum for demand by setting up targets, developing a clear vision on what the government sees in terms of hydrogen economy, creating, I mean, has been the case here, engaging with private actors to create the condition for public-private partnerships, etc. And then also formalize more technical standards, labels, safety standards, etc., that can help give more certainty to industrial actors in their investments. So a lot of details. I will not go into all these details. I think we are at time, but you see we have tried to provide an overview of what are some of the policy and regulatory levers in line with all the 5 principles that I just presented in the previous slide, where the government can play a role. So a role in facilitating creating a consortia, providing direct incentives, facilitating the permitting, the planning, and also helping to create the right set of codes and standards for hydrogen. Yeah, so just to conclude, these are, say, the 6 main things that we have analyzed in the report. So first one is the identification of these 3 hubs that can really serve as a starting point to develop an hydrogen economy in South Africa. Second one is we have looked at the demand side, so looking from a bottom-up view, which applications could be conducive to switch to hydrogen in the medium term, so up to 2030. The production side of things, so as I was saying, there is still a green premium, but we're not that far from competitiveness. And I would say green hydrogen, we need to start now, because it can, South Africa needs to be ready for the development. And the fourth one is about the socioeconomic impact, already mentioned. Fifth one is about the regulatory and policy enablers that are necessary if we want to really accelerate. And then we concluded on these 9 pilot projects that we hope will be the next step of this report. So we don't want that this report remains just a report, and then we can move from this PowerPoint to really some power plants. So something really concrete that is happening on the field. And so in that spirit, I would like again to emphasize this point. It's crucial to have this collaboration from the public sector, the private actors. This public-private partnership was at the heart of the spirit of this study, and this is what is necessary to actually now move into the implementation of the first project. So thanks for your attention, and if there are some questions, happy to take them. I don't know how much time I still have.
Thank you so much, Vincenzo. I'm just let us go into Q&A. I've got, if I'm going to ask that hands that go up. I already have a couple of questions that I picked up from the Q&A side on the system. So while we still await to get the hands, I'm gonna just read those through, and I'm quite aware that some of them you may not be able to respond to, but we are going to be also following up on them in terms of what they're about. Now, the first one that I picked up is from Dries Swanepoel, who has asked about the assumption on the 0-point distribution that was considered. Currently, the biggest cost sits in the midstream logistics, also the assumption between the distance, production, and consumption hub. So that's the first question. Maybe let's do also the second one from anonymous attendee, who says, South Africa will be the net importer of ammonia for use in fertilizer. Have you considered the use of hydrogen for this purpose? Economics should be advantageous to replace import parity of ammonia.
Yeah, okay, so the first one is that on the distribution, so what we have considered was really the notion of the hub was to have the demand and the supply very close to each other. So here for the distribution, we've just considered the use of trucks, pressurized trucks to move the hydrogen from the supply to the off-taker. So that's why you get to this number. If we go to the ammonia, yes, so we have, okay. So yeah, for ammonia, yes, so we have not considered the cost of ammonia. So when we're doing the competitive assessments, we've always looked at what's the cost of green ammonia compared to gray ammonia, and we have compared gray ammonia that is locally produced in South Africa. We have not considered the import of ammonia, but I think I mean it's an interesting suggestion. I think this will be. I don't think, I mean, the economics would change, so this could add to potentially additional hydrogen demand to also substitute the green ammonia imports. This is something we have not looked into explicitly, but this could be certainly an opportunity for further hydrogen demand in the hubs.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm still not seeing a hand, so I got a couple of questions as well. The one is Siva Kumar, which says, what is the rationale behind not selecting the Western Cape as one of the hubs to produce green hydrogen?
Yeah, that's
where there is best solar. So the second one, so he says where there's best solar to produce green hydrogen, good water resources, and port for shipping. And the second one is from Kat van der Heyden, which says, Sasol is exploring Buchebai as a potential hydrogen export port. Do you have any insight into the potential of the Northern Cape? And the other one from anonymous attendee, in terms of the Limpopo region, the IPCC 6 assessment indicates there will be more water scarce in those regions amidst, I think, issues of climate change. And how do we really balance that, for example, looking at green hydrogen versus human food? So I'm gonna pose those as I—
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, very good question. So the first question about the rationale not selecting Western Cape. So here the goal of the study was not to look at South Africa in its entirety, but we really deep dived on this corridor going from Mokalakuena to Durban, because there were already some initiatives happening there around hydrogen. So I mentioned the truck corridor, the development of mining trucks in the north. So we specifically looked at that area because we saw some momentum happening, and we wanted to look at what's the potential to further scale it up. This does not mean that other parts of South Africa could also develop, and actually there will be a great thing to further develop hydrogen hubs also outside that corridor. So the answer is that we have not selected Western Cape just because the focus, geographical focus of our analysis was specifically this corridor, but there will be interesting indeed to investigate what's the potential for hydrogen hub also in that area. And I think this also then answer a bit the question on the Buga Bay export port. So we have looked into what's happening there in the port, but we've not done a detailed assessment. We just looked into as when we were looking at Durban and Richards Bay as options for exports, we looked at what are some of the other projects that are happening in South Africa which other ports are being considered for export. So I think there will be more detailed assessment of comparison between different ports. And I don't think there is necessarily a restriction to have, I mean, it can be more than one port. I think that's our hypothesis that could be relevant once you have enough green hydrogen production ongoing. Just to be clear, in the way that we have assessed the demand in the valley, so the slide that you have just seen, we have not factored in the export potential. So just because it's there can be more less clear, but this can be certainly an add-on. And we wanted also to emphasize this point that developing the hydrogen domestic demand, it's an important starting point. In terms of water, I mean, this is a really great question. It's indeed, we have looked at this aspect, and it's also in terms of the just transition is a very important aspect to look at. We have looked not in detail all the water infrastructure, necessary investments in order to deliver that the water, but we have looked into more detail on in the different areas that we have in the hubs, what's the current vulnerability level in terms of water access. So we have looked at in Johannesburg, the vulnerability is moderate. In Durban is more on the high side. So there will be important also to strategically locate the position of the electrolyzers where there is water access. The issue indeed is more on the Mokalakuena area where there could be water shortages and poor infrastructure. So it's important that could be looking at opportunities like water recycling or truck delivery or investing further in infrastructure for groundwater extraction. So this should also be important complement to consider. And I think specifically for the Mokalakuena hub, in order to make sure that the water that is used for the hydrogen production is not at the detriment of course, of primary needs like food and human consumption.
Thank very much. The questions are coming in thick and fast. I got one from Swu in Charlie. Great start for South Africa. However, to date, we have not defined trading position in relation to hydrogen. Are we going to trade hydrogen as a chemical or energy commodity? Let's also define the role of government in both supply and demand side scenario. Going forward, we need to establish a clear Hydrogen Act to regulate hydrogen economy. Now, the question that Skalkberger asked, you already answered. It was really more about the impact of water scarcity. And then we also have a question from Archie Meyer, who says, how do solar compare to hydrogen? And then the last one that I would like you to take now is Banotile Makubela, who says hydrogen is relevant in the just transition energy transition, okay? Where coal-fired power stations in Mpumalanga area are proposed to be repurposed for decommissioning in 2030. And then it says which water bodies would be electrolyzed to produce hydrogen. So I'm going to stop there and then we take the rest. I'm also going to follow questions that I hear. They're coming through our chat system as well.
Okay, I don't understand the first question. Maybe the person can clarify. How do solar compare to hydrogen?
I'm gonna try and assume what this person means. I think it's probably looking at costing in terms of the cost of hydrogen and the cost of.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's in 2030, the component of so the main component for the LCOH. I mean, there are two main components. The first component is the cost of the electricity. So they'll say the LCOE, the levelized cost of electricity of the solar plant in this case, or can be the solar and wind, and the cost of the electrolyzer. These are the two main components. In today, the component it's predominant is that it's more on the electrolyzer side. But what we expect is that in 2030 we will have a reduction of the capex of the electrolyzer. So in the study we have considered a reduction of around 60%, which is already quite significant. Whereas for solar production, let's say the reduction in technology cost is somehow slower than for hydrogen. So then solar will account for a bigger share of the LCOH in 2030. If I look at the other question, so the coal-fired power station, yes, absolutely. So that was what I was mentioning when looking at the positive social impacts of the hydrogen economy, was also about reconverting jobs. So in areas where you need to shift from or retrain workers from high carbon sectors to low carbon sectors. So clearly, I mean, the workers in coal-fired power stations would certainly fit in that. So that could be an opportunity to repurpose via training the workers to hydrogen-related jobs. Which water bodies would be electrolyzed? Don't know if I understand the question, but it's still, I think it's about the water. So I think we looked at the supply of water. We have considered actually the cost of water in the LCOH. As I was saying, we have not done a detailed assessment of the whole infrastructure on how to reinforce the infrastructure of water to make sure that the water supply is produced. And we have in the report provided a number of recommendations on how to boost or improve the infrastructure for water to make it available for the hydrogen production. But we have not entered into a detailed, say, techno-economic assessment of the water infrastructure.
Okay, thank you very much. So I need to appreciate that we're bombarding you with all these questions and you don't necessarily, and I need to also say to those who are asking that Vincenzo may not necessarily have all the answers to all the questions. So some of them we are noting them and we have a follow-up with you. And then I see we've got a question from Hein Mola who says, do you think that the Bujanala SEZ and the platinum incubator in Northwest will become important in future? And then Pedro says, do you consider the cost range of hydrogen suggested will be competitive worldwide? And then Wandile says, going forward, who can we get in touch with? So Wandile, you can get in touch with either myself or Rebecca Masrimule. We will probably find a way of sharing our contacts with you. So I think those are probably amongst the ones that the last questions that you need to handle, and then we can move to the next one. And we apologize for those questions that we will not have dealt with now, but we will make sure we follow up definitely.
Yeah, I know, but it's great to see there's so much interest. So okay, first question on the Bujanala Platinum Valley. So we have not looked at that specifically, or I need to revert to the team to check if it was the case. I don't know. I don't have the answer on this one. So double check and get back to you. The second one is that the cost range of hydrogen suggested will be competitive worldwide. So we think, I mean, that's, as I showed in one of the slides, the hydrogen for export will it's something, I mean, there's quite close to other competitors, so it needs to be seen how this actually develop and how much hydrogen demand develops in other countries. But I was mentioning there are cases like, it was interesting that the German Ministry initiative for the Global H2 initiative, where they are looking for development of projects in countries outside Germany, and South Africa has been considered as one of them. So they consider that the competitiveness, I mean, South Africa is in the right range of competitiveness, and South Africa has a number of good assets. I mean, very good renewable potential, access to ports, etc. So that's the part on the export. On the part on the, I hear the point on South African industry. So I guess here the question is more if it's only the South African industry that bears the cost of moving to green hydrogen, then we can lose competitiveness. So I would say there that is the range of the cost that we see here is in line with what we see also in other countries. So it's there is clearly potential to further reduce this cost, but this will happen when the scale of hydrogen projects really materialize worldwide. So this will be an impact that will affect all the countries. And then what I would emphasize is that making sure that you are on the path to adopt green hydrogen in the industry, in the mining, is really addressing risks on the market, because we talked quite a bit about the climate risks, the climate-related risks. These climate-related risks come also with demand looking for green products, or let's say green minerals, or green ammonia, etc. So this is the direction where the world is going and needs to go if we want to achieve the targets of the Paris Agreement. So that's where the world is going. So it's important not to be left behind and just to wait for green hydrogen to be adopted by other countries. So that's the rationale behind.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
We're now gonna, thanks very much. I really appreciate your trying to cover as many questions as possible. I also need to indicate here that some of the questions will be answered by the next speakers, including many of those that are government related, that will be dealt with by our DG when he gives his keynote, especially in terms of the role of government and other areas mentioned in terms of what needs to happen. So with that, I really want to then enter a space where I'm going to be asking our partners to really have their moment, the 3 minutes allocated to each one of you. And we are going to start this turn with the CEO of Anglo American Platinum, Ms. Natasha Fedun. Is Natasha on the podium?
Yes, I am. I do apologize. Thank you. And good morning to everybody, and thank you for the opportunity. I think wanting to definitely start off by just saying thank you to all the contributors to this piece of work. I think it's It's a really excellent piece of work. And as Anglo-American, we've been a very early supporter of the global potential for a hydrogen economy. And we also recognize the role in enabling the shift to a greener energy and cleaner energy sector. And that's why we're really excited to see the impressive progress that this project has made over the past months. I think it plays a very important role, not only for us as a company in understanding what this economy could look like, but I think as a country, the potential that this opens up for us is really mind-boggling. And the more I'm getting the opportunity to work and understand this space better, the more excited I do get. Now, we believe that the transition to a low-carbon world is an opportunity for us to drive the development in cleaner technologies and to create this new industry and employment that can mean so much for us as a country. And as a company, it's very close to our heart and our purpose of reimagining mining to improve people's lives. And we want to continue to play our role in that improve people's lives. The findings of this report, I believe, are testament to the growth and the development that can be ignited through a coordinated and a collective investment in the hydrogen economy. Over the past years, as Anglo-American Platinum, we have designed an approach that we believe sets us apart and position us as a company as an ideal player to establish the right framework and create the right conditions to make a transition to a hydrogen-fueled economy. But also not only to make it desirable, but also commercially viable and attractive. And we've heard the report giving us feedback on how we can make it cost competitive in the process. Now, our interest in hydrogen, as you all know, originally stems from our role as the world's leading producer of platinum group metals, as we have an important role to play in the development of new and pioneering technologies. And this include the use in fuel cells to create electricity and power electric vehicles, and in the production of transport of green hydrogen, and some very exciting work that we're doing also in the battery space and minimizing food waste, all linked to making the world a better place for people who live in it. We have a broader, more systemic view of the hydrogen economy, though, and we see how deploying hydrogen solutions can help us optimize our own operations, and that by pioneering innovative technology, we can meet our target of achieving carbon neutrality across all of our operations, across Anglo-American, not only Anglo-American Platinum, before 2040. Our efforts are aimed at shaping an ecosystem to incentivize, promote, and facilitate the adoption of hydrogen as a clean fuel, but also crucially and more broadly, the development of the infrastructure and refueling networks needed to truly enable the awareness and building confidence in hydrogen's renewable energy potential and investing in promising technologies and entrepreneurial projects. Now, we work alongside a global network of stakeholders, influencing business partners, policymakers, and experts about discovering and assembling new ventures, deploying and leveraging growth capital, and enabling commercial collaboration. Very exciting, and there's been a mention of this a couple of times this morning, is the development of a hydrogen-powered fuel cell mine haul truck. Making the first time a truck of this size. It is the largest drivetrain in the world, and it will fuel a 300-ton mine haul truck to run on hydrogen. And I think it's a perfect embodiment of the approach that I've spoken about earlier on. The project, however, doesn't only focus on the truck itself, but we're also building a demonstration facility at our Mokalakuena mine that includes a 3.5 megawatt electrolyzer to produce the hydrogen on site that will ultimately support the truck. And in extension to that, we are building a 100 megawatt PV plant that will ensure that we ultimately produce green hydrogen. And I think it's really important for us to play our role in that technology development, understanding the entire supply chain, working towards this further commercialization, cost effectiveness, and also looking at the safety aspects of how you would operate an asset like that. The creation of consortia to promote the development of hydrogen freight corridors, such as the one that we've been facilitating in South Africa together with the partners here today, is also meeting a broader ZEV project, and is a way to leverage our networks, scale and reach to accelerate the uptake of heavy-duty fuel cell electric vehicles. We do this by aligning end-user demand with a supply of suitable vehicles and access to the requisite hydrogen infrastructure along these freight routes. So with all of this in mind, really excited about the work that the team here today has done in this presenting that culminated in the report that is presented here today, and really looking forward to furthering these efforts and playing our part, both in the partnership with DSI and other parties involved in this project, as well as through a range of our own Anglo-American-led initiatives to unlock the full potential of the hydrogen economy and to create new engines of economic, social, and environmental development for our country, South Africa. Thank you again from my side for being part of this venture.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the views that you have expressed. And next in line will be the CEO of Limpopo Economic Development Agency, Mr. Takani Makuba.
Thank you so much, Program Director, for the opportunity for us to also share our appreciation, particularly for Limpopo to have been identified as one of the hydrogen value within Mokalakuena in our Waterberg district municipality. So we really appreciate that, and we believe that we have as a province ability to deliver in what is expected from us. The Limpopo Development Plan 2020 to 2025 has set out a number of priorities that needs to be achieved to ensure that this vision is being realized, being resilient and vibrant, to ensure that the province become prosperous as we move forward. And some of these priorities obviously are to install an enabling information and communication technology network, and also to broaden the energy mix within our province, which is very critical. So this Limpopo Economic Development Plan foresees a province that embraces renewable energy to reduce the reliance on fossil fuel in the country. And the businesses are then required or expected to be embracing the 4IR, and they are globally competitive, and ensure that new economic infrastructure that can enable the province to leap into the future with the use of the 4IR as we progress to the next phase in terms of our development as the province. LEADER and its subsidiaries, we have got 7 subsidiaries within the group. So it is critical for us to really ensure that we introduce new concepts and new technologies for the province. As you may be aware, the Musina Makadu SEZ has already developed what we call a smart city strategy. Our Limpopo connection is making a good progress with the implementation of the broadband infrastructure for the entire province, looking at cloud technologies, as well as the establishment of science and technology park that has been referred to in the presentation that has been made earlier. And this will then form the backbone of the province for our journey, and will support many new technologies like your big data, your artificial intelligence, industry type, 3D printing, and robotic. Many of LEADER as the group and its subsidiaries, the initiatives thereof, and projects are prime candidates for the integration of clean and renewable energy into the design of these facilities. LIDA and the Department of Science and Innovation are currently conducting a study on how to power the data center of the Science and the Technology Park that I referred to with green hydrogen and other renewable energy sources like your solar energy and biofuels. Hydrogen, we believe, is a key ingredient in the energy transition and a significant contributor to the achievement of net zero carbon economy. LIDA will not only play the role of a consumer of hydrogen in its SEZ, as well as in its science and technology park, as we have indicated earlier, because there are a number of contributions that LIDA needs to look at as we move to the next phase in terms of what we are expected to do as the province. So many of these initiatives and projects are prime candidates for the integration of clean and renewable energy in the design of these facilities. LIDA and the Department of Science and Technology has indicated this study that we talk about in terms of the data center is crucial for us to move forward. So as I'm saying, we are not going to only play the role of consumer of the hydrogen at SEZ, as well as the technology part, but we'll also strive to become the producer of hydrogen and other clean technologies. The LSTP, which is the Science and Technology Park that we spoke about, will then act as a data hub and connectivity center offering broadband, data storage, the 5G services to the wider region. And these services are intended indeed to power the economy, build South Africa's space in a future technology-driven economy, and provide employment for younger people. As you're aware that younger people are really been impacted negatively from the issue of employment in the whole country, and in particular in our province of Limpopo. So as I conclude, the Hydrogen Value Platform has the potential to drive the demand for the mining input supplies, thereby creating an opportunity for a large-scale industrialization for both the manufacturing of mining inputs and the beneficiation of mining inputs. In addition, the Hydrogen Valley Corridor has the potential to contribute towards the Fitahumo towards the SEZ of supporting a broad-based industrialization, growth path, balanced regional industrial growth, and development of more competitive and productive regional economies with strong up and downstream links in strategic value chains, especially in the PGMS. The intention of our Fitahumo is to establish a global center for excellence on green energy, technology, and mineral beneficiation to meet energy demand by existing mines and smelting operation, as well as future manufacturing cluster in the SEZ. So it is on this basis, Chairperson, that we are pleased to be associated with this collaboration, and us again for us to be identified as the hydrogen value for the province, and in particular relating to the Mokalakuena municipality. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to share our views and input in this discussion. I thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Makuba. The next will be the CEO of Bambili Energy, Ms. Zanele Mavusombata.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to participate today. So I think that the first point that I'd like to make is that the green hydrogen economy for South Africa is going beyond a concept into something that is implementable for all of us. And I think to start off with, it's very important to acknowledge the leadership of the DSI on behalf of government and our other partners, Anglo-American, ANGI, and also Sanedi, in terms of putting together this hydrogen value report. This report, we believe, gives us the data and the information on how we can best create green jobs, reinvent businesses, and create new industries for South Africa. We at Bambili have been on this journey already for the last couple of years, and with our partners and with our customers, we've been developing the fuel cell industry in South Africa and talking to markets as far as Nigeria and Kenya, because we believe that the hydrogen economy creates a very strong platform for export into the rest of the African continent and beyond. The reason in this period that we're in South Africa, what you're finding is that there's so much interest around the hydrogen economy that has really picked up, especially over the last couple of months. You could almost dare say that green hydrogen is becoming the new black. Who would ever think that a chemical would become so sexy that everybody would want to be talking about it, understanding it, and trying to understand how they can participate in this new economy. And we believe that this hydrogen value report provides an opportunity for information that is implementable. I think it's going beyond policy and helping us understand how we can work as project partners to realize this hydrogen economy. And whilst there's been a number of reports in the market around the hydrogen economy, we urge you to look at and study this report in detail, because it's been put together by project partners who are already working in the hydrogen economy, and the DSI, who has been at the forefront of helping develop and support the policy complement to ensure that this hydrogen economy is a success for South Africa. And as Vincenzo mentioned earlier on, the data points and the input in the study, we talked to over 60 participants, over 20 organizations, and therefore it's really rooted in its practical nature. And so I really urge all of you to pick up a copy and review it in detail. The next point that I'd like to make is really about the fact that the hydrogen value report makes a very strong case for a domestic hydrogen economy. The debate and the big conversation in South Africa currently has been very focused on the issue of export of hydrogen. And that is very important, and it does offer South Africa a very large opportunity. But a domestic market is an area that we need to have an equal emphasis on. I think that we need to take a heed and experience from other African nations who have developed a commodity solely for export. And so in order to have a sustainable hydrogen economy in South Africa, it is the domestic use of the hydrogen and the export of hydrogen that's going to allow us to have that kind of a sustainable and a successful industry. The next point that I'd like to make is the fact that we at Bambili have been working very hard with our partners around really looking at the issue of how do we aggregate the demand of hydrogen going forward. In terms of opportunities that we've seen significant market interest and opportunity over the last couple of months, particularly with customers and partners in the mining industry, in the chemical industry, in real estate as well. And the work that we are also working on in terms of the hydrogen corridor for heavy duty trucks and buses. We believe that to bring down the price of hydrogen and to make it highly competitive it's the aggregation game, and we are very excited about the work that we're doing with our partners in that regard. Lastly, I'd just like to really thank the partners who we've had a fantastic collaboration in terms of putting together this hydrogen value report And I'd also like to acknowledge the audience and thank you for being with us today in the launching of the Hydrogen Value Report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zanele. And on behalf of the CEO of the GGDA, we're going to have the group executive of the GGDA responsible for micro business intelligence, and that is Mr. Muzi Matema. Muzi, are you on the line? Okay, it doesn't look like we've got Muzi on. Can I then move on to the representative of ENGIE, which is Ms. Caroline Hiligia, who is the Chief Commercial Officer?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Yes, you are on the podium and we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words today. What a great day to present the result of this feasibility study. It is the Hydrogen Day today, so you couldn't choose a better momentum to kickstart these activities. I fully concur with all what has been said by our partners, also with the result presented by Vincenzo. And I'm very happy about those results and the collaborations that brought such result. It's really the first good seeds for the future. As you know, renewable hydrogen is at the heart of the ENGIE strategy to accompany its clients and territories on the path to carbon neutrality. We have announced strong development targets to the market earlier this year on hydrogen, which are 4 gigawatts of installed capacity by 2030, 70 kilometers of dedicated hydrogen networks, 1 terawatt-hour of storage capacity, as well as operating more than 100 refueling stations. And with more than 200 experts on the ground to develop those projects, we are in action. And we have a solid and diversified pipeline of 70 projects, of which 20 are above 50 megawatt scale. Those are under development, about reaching financial close, under construction. And one of our projects, guess what? It is in South Africa, together with Anglo American. We are currently completing the construction of a 3.5 megawatt hydrogen production unit to fuel the first world hydrogen mining truck. And that will be at the Mokalakuena mine. So really, as global player, we consider South Africa as one of the sweet spots on Earth to produce this green hydrogen and to develop this economy. The fundamentals of the country are really good, and South Africa will play an important role worldwide. And we are very pleased that all local authorities are engaged in this route towards implementation, because that's what is counting, that's what's important. It's a project we can develop to kickstart that. Really interesting times also, and exciting times for ENGIE to see that the vision we have been deploying since a few years of building and interconnecting hydrogen hubs is getting materiality. And as what was said before, it is for us very important to start from, of course, the most favorable side, like in South Africa, but to start building this domestic market, building a facility with an anchor industrial offtake, let it be chemicals, refineries, or mine, really to have a sizable infrastructure and to be able to bring the cost down, the cost to parity with the more CO2 content type of solution. Then leveraging on local partnership, we will generate increasingly large volume of hydrogen demand and scale up. And then last but not least, is really anticipating for the export towards a worldwide market. And the Hydrogen Valley in South Africa is really at the core of its vision. So really great to see that. Also, what I want to emphasize is that those projects are really accelerating the energy transition, developing growth, generating economic and social development and value. For us, it's really an industrial project at the core of South Africa, leveraging on the existing infrastructure, creating jobs, and really also anticipating and pushing further the local platinum industry. Last but not least, I also want to emphasize the great example of public-private partnership that is playing a key role for the development of renewable hydrogen. It's really facilitating the deployment. It makes capital expenditure affordable as of now to encourage this development and to formalize, anchor the hydrogen sector through the standards and the label. So I would like to conclude by saying congrats for this analysis, but now let's collaborate and do it, because that will be the most important part. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We're going back to the executive who's representing the CEO of the GGDA, Mr. Muzima Tema. Apologies, we couldn't pick you up the last time, so you're on the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Program Director. Thank you to the panelists, as well as the invited guests, as well as the VIPs that are present today. I represent the Group CEO of the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. The Gauteng Growth and Development Agency is the implementing agency of the Gauteng Province's economic development ambitions. And within those economic development ambitions, we have what is called the Growing Gauteng Together policy document, which identifies 10 high growth sectors, of which the energy and transitioning to a green energy mix is one of those identified sectors. Prior to the release of today's report, we have done, as a province of Gauteng, quite considerable work around inclusive industrialization, particularly inclusive industrialization in the spirit of a special economic zone program across our various city regions. And at the heart of that special economic zone program is a very ambitious green hydrogen approach in 3 of those special economic zones program. But at the heart of what we are doing in the green hydrogen sector, as well as in other areas of industrialization, is really driving the agenda of inclusive industrialization, an industrialization approach that basically deepens the value chains and makes sure that we have inclusive SME participation, but also an industrialization approach that takes into account deeper intra-Africa commerce drive. So over and above what has been discussed in today's report, we also have a very strong ambitions that are aligned to this green hydrogen and green value project. Some of those include making sure that our special economic zones and our industrialization ambitions are driven by greener and cleaner fuels with hydrogen at the heart of that. But we also identify that the fact that the Gauteng City region will be a key producer within South Africa and within the African continent of hydrogen energy, we will position ourselves as an exporter of hydrogen and also as an enabler of manufacturing that is aligned to hydrogen. For example, the production of steel vessels that will be used to transport hydrogen within and to the rest of the global markets in the world. We have positioned ourselves as a city region that will be a key producer of that. But we also do see the opportunity within the African continent to produce that. But what I'd like to touch on in the 3 minutes that I've been allocated, is the fact that at the heart of our ambitions and our partnership in this is the skills development agenda. It would be remiss for us to roll out the green hydrogen policy without being considerate of the fact that we do need to have a skills revolution that supports the green hydrogen sector. We have done quite a lot of considerable work with various partnerships, some mentioned in today's document, but some also existing outside the orbit of this document, in order to make sure that the industrialization, and particularly inclusive industrialization, green hydrogen ambitions of the province are taken into account. But I'd like to close by also congratulating the researchers on this research. And this research really joins the molecule of other research that have been done by South Africa in making sure that we have the scientifically driven industrialization process towards green energy and green hydrogen. Thank you.
Thank you, Muzi. And we're just gonna, without any waste of time, go straight into the keynote address. And DG, I really have to apologize. We're coming back to you very, very late. And I'm just recalling the discussion that we had at the day before yesterday when we were launching the facility in the Eastern Cape, when you said asking people who are passionate to talk for 3 minutes is probably a bit of a problem. And I really want to apologize for that. I'm going to just immediately hand over to the DG of the Department of Science and Innovation, under whom this program has actually ran from the time it was just conceptualized, made into a strategy. And today we can actually talk about a number of deployments of hydrogen fuel cells, and also this report, which actually maps out how things are going to go into the final commercialization stage. So I hand over to the DG of the Department of Science and Innovation, Dr. Phil Mjwaha.
Thanks very much,
DG, the platform is yours.
Thanks very much. I hope you can hear me. Dr. Mope?
We can hear you loud and clear, DG.
All right.
We can hear you loud and clear.
No need to apologize. I've enjoyed the engagement and the set of questions that were sent to Vincenzo. So I think it shows interest in this work that we are doing. So again, please allow me not to acknowledge all the dignitaries which you did at the beginning. So in the interest of time, just want to start by thanking all of you for supporting us, and also for affording me the opportunity to say a few words. The first is, it's already been said that today the launch coincides with the International Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Day. And as some of you may be aware, this day was established by the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association to raise awareness of hydrogen and fuel cell technologies, and provides an opportunity for reflecting on how far the industry has come, as well as the vast potential of these technologies and what these technologies have for improving people's lives today and in the future. But what does this mean for us as the department? So the report is the culmination of a long-standing investment by the Department of Science and Technology, then in Science and Innovation, now in the development and application of scientific knowledge that we see as critical for advancing our national developmental and global competitiveness goal. I would like to emphasize this point because this is a new way of doing things in South Africa, which is not fully advanced in the debates and the discussions that are happening both politically and in the economic space. So we're extremely delighted, therefore, to demonstrate that scientific knowledge and research can really be used to transform socioeconomic development in South Africa. Specifically, it means that we can do beneficiation in South Africa. I know Vincenzo indicated that perhaps the amount of platinum that would be used in the hydrogen and fuel cell program and some of these studies that have been launched today is minimal, but nevertheless, it demonstrates a long-standing problem in South Africa, that if we want to transform our economy, we do need to add value to our minerals. We also see this as extremely important in working with other colleagues in the government to start the medium and high-tech industrial development in South Africa. This is in line, as you know, with what the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition is doing. in terms of the reindustrialization. So we see this study as something that would contribute directly to that debate. And as you also thirdly know, is that we see our investment in the hydrogen economy as supporting the implementation of government's economic reconstruction and recovery plan. In support of phases 2 and 3 of this plan, and as part of the first phase of the Platinum Valley, a Hydrogen Valley feasibility study was therefore completed in partnership with, as you have heard, all the partners that have come to work with us. So we are extremely delighted to see that we are going to contribute to such a study and make sure that we contribute to the economic recovery. There was a question earlier on, Mboneni, about what does this study mean in terms of socioeconomic conditions. So I just want to give our understanding of the implementation of the Hydrogen Valley, which has the potential to add between 3.9 and 8.8 billion US dollars to the country. We've already seen these numbers from the presentation through direct and indirect contributions by 2050, while creating approximately 14,000 to 30,000 direct and indirect jobs by 2030. This growth in jobs is expected in sectors across the hydrogen value chain, ranging from water resource management, this question was asked earlier on, platinum mining, to production, including electrolyzer development, to transport, as you've heard, storage, liquefaction, and finally to applications such as fuel cell manufacturing. The expected job creation would be in the fields as diverse as research and development, engineering, maintenance, training, and outreach, and will have enormous potential to contribute to the country's energy transition. There was a question that talked about, what about the other parts of the country? Will they be excluded from this work? Yes, Vincenzo, you're correct that this was specific to the Hydrogen Valley from Durban all the way to Limpopo. But we have ambitions to do this in other parts of the world. And if we had more time, we would share with you from the government perspective and from some of the initiatives that have been identified as part of the Hydrogen Society Roadmap, what the potential has outside these that we are launching today. And one of the things that I'm particularly excited about is that it is also important to see this Hydrogen Valley as a place that will open up training for young people. In fact, in one of the initiatives that we've been driving, we have partnered with one of the SETAs, the Water and Energy SETA, to begin to train TVET students to participate in the work of fixing the fuel cells, managing the fuel cells. So what we are saying, therefore, is that it has the potential to really play an extremely important role in the socio-economic development. And then I would also like perhaps to share with the meeting that what we also see this document is it helps us to translate from policy or strategy to concrete deliverables. Recently, we tabled a CAB memo on the outcomes of the Hydrogen Society Roadmap, Mboneni, Rebecca, and I. And one of the recommendations that came out of that presentation was that government intends to set up a coordinating structure that will take the implementation of the Hydrogen Society Roadmap forward. So when you ask about how are we going to use the regulatory environment to stimulate demand, what are the incentives that we need to put in place to make sure that this happens? This is going to be part of the direction that we have already been given by Cabinet in order to take this forward. And then I would like to indicate that implementing such a complex initiative is not going to be achievable unless we continue with the ongoing partnerships that we've had with some of the partners that are here today, but with other partners that have raised their hands and they said they would like to work with us. So we will continue to explore what those partnerships are, but for now we are extremely grateful to yourselves, Anglo, Bambili, Limpopo Economic Development Agency, Gauteng, and as I say, we are not the only ones, but your presence today is not taken lightly and not taken for granted. And I would be killed if I do not express my sincere thanks to the DSI team, Dr. Mope, Rebecca, Mendy, and the rest of the DSI team that has really worked tirelessly in this initiative for over 10 years. Mboneni says, it's me who has done this. All I do is just to sign approvals to go to the minister. And then I also like to express my gratitude and my thanks to Sanedi, because as our energy secretariat on the work that we do, we wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for you. Angie, for the brilliant study that you've done. And then I also like perhaps to raise the profile of our SASTA, the South African Agency for Science Technology Advancement, as part of looking at how we can increase our ability to get the society engaged on these technologies and what science can do in people's lives. So we are really extremely delighted about that. And then Vincenzo, of course, and Letabo for the introduction at the beginning and the presentation. So with those few words, we have our support, and we will continue to make sure that this project and this study is translated into something that you would be proud of. Thank you very much, Mboni.
Thank you so much, DG. I think that basically brings us to a point where I'm going to hand over to the acting director of SASTA just to give some words of vote of thanks, and then from there we are going to get into the space of media engagements. Thanks very much. Michael?
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Morfe. It really is a pleasure to deliver just a short vote of thanks at the end of this valuable session. At the NRF, at the National Research Foundation, our vision for 2030 is research for a better society. I mean, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that what we have heard today is well aligned with that vision. And also to that of the Department of Science and Innovation, which is increased well-being and prosperity through science, technology, and innovation. We have discussed research and innovation that through its design has the potential to lead to a better society in South Africa. Better in terms of being able to set up these hydrogen hubs that will assist in kickstarting the hydrogen economy through supporting the concept of a hydrogen valley. Better in terms of job creation, of impact on individual livelihoods and households in South Africa. And better in terms of the broader economic benefits to industry and to the immediate communities and to the international and domestic commercialization potential of hydrogen in South Africa. Within our business unit at the National Research Foundation, as DG Mdwaka said, we aim to support and advocate for research and innovation to be conducted in a societally engaged manner and to be communicated and utilized for the benefit of broader society. So this feasibility study has taken this very bottom-up assessment approach to determine the technical hydrogen demand potentially in South Africa. And we believe that this type of approach to determining research utilization potential is therefore one that can have a real positive impact on broader South African society. So with those few words, we just thank all the role players and contributors to this feasibility study and to the work and developments that it will enable in the future. I think some comments have been made. You know, this is a journey we're now on, and that the hard work now starts. To the main study partners, Energy Services, Anglo American Platinum, Mabili Energy, and Sanedi, thank you for your wholehearted commitment to this process and also to sustainable economic development in South Africa. We specifically thank the chief executives who have made the time to join us and engage in the discussions today. Thank you to our program facilitator, Dr. Morfe, and to all of our colleagues at DSI and SASTA who have made this dialogue session a reality. And lastly, of course, we'd also like to thank all the audience and participants who really just engaged in the session. We trust that this feasibility study will add value to you and to the constituents and organizations that you represent. So thank you very much to all of you, and thank you very much. Handing back to you, Dr. Morfe. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks very much. So we now towards the tail end of our program, and we're going to be moving into the space of engagement with the media, and there is proposals that those who want to engage can also do so through the chat platform. And if you can, also if you are able, if you can raise your hand and we'll pick that up and make sure that we give you a platform to ask questions. When you ask questions, representative of government, please be clear that this question goes to so and so. If you're not sure, of course, you can just ask a question and then we'll see how we reallocate that. We are going to be going back to the charts to see those questions that have come in without wanting to repeat. So I already am picking up a question that is coming from anonymous attendee. Anonymous attendee has been quite busy. And the first question is government going to provide incentives to stimulate local green hydrogen consumption while it is still significantly expensive? And then the next one, I think from anonymous attendee, is DST, which is DSI. DTIC previously spent years and a lot of money on fuel cells roadmaps. HISA and the Isondo company, outcomes are still unclear. What will be done differently on H2? I probably need to say to anonymous attendee, that what you are seeing today is an outcome of the HISA program. So we have invested a lot of money. We now have some products that have been commercialized and we are moving into broader commercialization. That much I can tell you. So today's meeting is really about the maturity of HISA. And then the next question is, did you consider byproduct hydrogen from some of the chlor-alkaline electrolysis as a source, which would require much less capex? And then I think in the meantime, I'm gonna just stop there as I look at other questions. I agree with that. So that's really where I'm going to take and see if anyone can take the questions that have been asked as we review some of the questions on the chat. Any takers for some of the questions? I see DG, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mboneni, and thanks to the question. I want to respond to the two briefly. The incentives for green products that will arise out of this. And then also respond to the question about what's going to be different and why do we think we are now getting to implementation. So let me start with the second one. I indicated in my short speech that about 3-4 weeks ago, we tabled the Hydrogen Society Roadmap outcomes to Cabinet. And one of the recommendations that was made was that a government-wide team, including DTIC, DSI initially, and DMRE will be set up, and we're going back to the cluster and then to Cabinet to say, this is the structure that we are proposing. And DMRE on including, I think, hydrogen and fuel cell as part of the energy mix. The Department of Transport has also been included as part of their green transport strategy. And then DTIC, they have already set up a commercialization panel. And Rebecca serves on that panel to look at how you can mobilize resources and also the incentives that are needed in order to drive this as one of our industrial economic reconstruction and recovery work. So that team will now be a government-wide team that will be driving this. And in fact, if I recall, Rebecca, the expectation is that every 6 months, this team will report to Cabinet on the progress that's been made. So we think that the maturity of appreciation of what this sector could do in South Africa as part of the transformation of the economy is now much higher than before. And therefore, we think that by being directed this way, we'll be able to start identifying all those initiatives that government needs to drive as part of doing this. I saw in Vincenzo's presentation that one of the areas that have done very, very well in making sure that they are competitive in this space was Europe. And I do know the role of government in incentives and the regulatory environment to stimulate demand that they have played. So part of this team would be looking at the policy learning from other parts of the world in order to make sure we drive this. And then the second one, of course, is therefore following immediately from there, that we'll be looking at what kind of incentives do we want and what would those incentives do. One of the questions that came earlier on is, are we going to lose jobs in South Africa? And the answer is, as the economy transforms, or as it is transformed, definitely we are going to lose jobs in some of the sectors. So we see this, or the incentives would be motivated not only just because we want to stimulate demand, but how it's going to drive, I think, new jobs of the future, new jobs of the economy that needs to have value-added products and medium to high-tech products that we need for the country. Thanks, Dr. Mope.
Thank you, DG. I think some of the questions that have already been responded to that have been asked. One will include the issue of the measures being taken by government to promote the renewable energies in terms of energy development and who the institutions are. So I think that really deals with Gaviarasu's question. There's also a question around the stakeholders. I think those by and large have been identified as well. Now I hear that there is a hand by, let me just, Mr. Lutendo Mamburu has the hand up. If you can just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Thanks, Dr. Mope. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me, but the question is around the value chain of the hydrogen with regards to the electrolyzers and the hydrogen fuel cells in terms of manufacturing and job creation in that part. Have we reviewed that on how are we going to capacitate the industry for us to be able to manufacture this locally and not have them imported from all over the world? That for me is very important in terms of skills development, in terms of maintenance afterwards, and support. So it's very important that we also consider that part.
Thank you. That's a very relevant question, and we got some work that we're already doing in that line, and I'm going to volunteer Ms. Zanele Mbata to respond to that, including Dr. Chiteme, who will respond to the issue of the byproduct. So I'm going to start with Ms. Zanele Mavuso Mbata, and then to Dr.
Thank you, DDG. In response, thank you for that's a great question. I think you'd be happy to know that there are several initiatives underway to manufacture fuel cell systems in South Africa. And we at Bambili are one of the companies that are involved in the development of the fuel cell industry, which allows a plethora of opportunities from beneficiation of platinum group metals to creation of green jobs. We are particularly focused on youth unemployment. And in that regard, we have partnered with the DSI as well as the University of Pretoria to start training individuals around fuel cell systems. In order for us to develop this industry, it's very important that it's underwritten by by human capacity as well, so that we have the necessary skills in South Africa. We are finding that as we talk to customers, they are asking us that very question as to when we have deployed the fuel cell systems, do we have the individuals in country? And we're very proud of the fact that to date, with our partners, we have trained 38 individuals who are work ready. And as we talk to other industry players about the training that has been completed, there's great excitement by industry players to join in the consortium of basically scaling up this training so that we can find unemployed South African youth in all corners of the country who can benefit from this training and find new green jobs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chiteme.
Thank you, Program Director, and good morning to you, colleagues. Indeed, the byproduct hydrogen is going to play an important role within the context of the work that was reported on today in the Hydrogen Valley. There is already work that is being done in collaboration with Chlorochem, where some of the technologies developed through the HISA program are being used to clean that byproduct hydrogen to get it to fuel cell grade. So if there are people who need more details on that, they can either contact me or Professor Besarabo from Northwest University. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We've got a hand that we've also picked up from Mr. Hopong. If you can just take the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and one wants to start by appreciating this platform and exciting discussions in this symposium. Like I indicated earlier in some earlier meeting, that I'm Soli Hopong, the head of Lcoh Mutuba's Special Economic Zone. So I just thought one cannot lose this opportunity of flagging the Lcoh Special Economic Zone as an area where we want to create a center of excellence on green energy for mineral beneficiation. The chairperson would know that it's an area that has got a high concentration of mining operations, as well as smeltings, which has got huge energy consumption. And we thought this SEZ can be used as a platform for transitioning into hydrogen energy. I just wanted to hear from Vincento or perhaps Natasha if they can comment on perhaps, I saw you have got 9 pilots, it's an odd number. Perhaps you can look at an even number and make Lcoh Mutuba as the 10th hub pilot going forward. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hopong. I also want to push this one as well, which I think is a very important question from Anon on refueling and compression infrastructure for the short to medium term. What then is the view around, I think it's unlocking broader domestic and mobility application by 2030, if there's little investment and compression. Going to respond to that, I'm going to ask Rebecca to deal with that, because that is actually part of the bigger Hydrogen Society roadmap. So I'll note that, and the question that was made by Mr. Hopong. So let's have those dealt with. This question on the refueling and compression infrastructure.
No, thanks.
And I know I hear that Ms. Leon. Ms. Felun will also respond to Hopong's question.
Sally, thank you for your query. I believe that, when we looked at the different projects throughout the valley, or the Limpopo, Gauteng, as well as KZN, we did look at the demands for different organizations or industrial facilities in Limpopo. So we looked at, I think you have a silicon facility and so forth. Now, the rationale for choosing, let's say, Limpopo Science and Technology Park versus the Fetegamo to Batse SEZ is because of the proximity to the N1, and the trucks would pass by the Limpopo Science and Technology Park. And as you are aware, we're doing a deep dive on the role of hydrogen at the Limpopo Science and Technology Park. So I think there's probably appetite for doing a deep dive on the Fetegamo to Batse SEZ sometime over the next few months. And I think that in terms of the importance is also looking at going north into the rest of Africa, SADC, and so forth, and looking at the Beighton Bridge as a key enabler for even spreading the hydrogen economy going north. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Then the response to Mr. Hopong's question is coming.
If I can just probably, Rebecca did a very good job in answering that question. So I don't think I've got anything additional to add to that point, other than there's probably, I think I certainly do not have a full appreciation for the ultimate knock-on effects as we get the hydrogen economy going. One of the very interesting aspects, just considering that Tubatsi area and considering the high energy requirement from some of our chrome smelters, for instance, would be to consider as we really embark on this green energy journey and we make renewables really affordable and we make sure that we get that reliable energy supply back. I think there is significant knock-on effect to bring infrastructure, manufacturing back into South Africa and supporting some of the industries who had to review their business models in South Africa. So certainly, in addition to just looking at the hydrogen economy and some of these early enablers, that I believe exactly this is what this corridor would be, an early enabler of a much broader impact on our economy. So probably just to add a slightly different view on what the answer that very good answer that Rebecca also already gave. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Just trying to check. We are probably one or two questions away from closing the session, and I'm just trying to check which questions have come through that I haven't looked at. Okay, I seem to have any on the screen that I think I've left out. And if there isn't any other hand, I'll probably just like to thank everybody who participated in this event. We had just over 240 people. The attendance is good even during this media session. We still have way over 132 thereabout people. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the teams that have put together this event, those that have been responsible for the report itself. And I say that today really is just the launch of this report, but this is just a symbol of the work that lies ahead in terms of what needs to happen for us to become a truly hydrogen society, which will, by us transitioning responsibly, the so-called just transition, because it is important that when we transition from these various areas of technology to the other, that we don't leave society behind. So that is really quite important, even in terms of how we're going to deal with matters of the hydrogen society. So I thank everybody who's been part of this, and I wish you a very happy Friday. We want to also encourage those who have not yet vaccinated to please do so. Let's try and avoid the potential negative impact of the fourth wave. And we want to really move to a point where the economy can be returned to its normal self before COVID. So thanks very much. I really appreciate. You have been a very great audience for those of you who have joined to listen, and we appreciate you. All the questions, we really appreciate the level of engagement that you have had, to all people who have asked questions. And please, any time out of this meeting, if you've got any question, feel free to contact us. We'll make sure that we engage with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.